So Brandon, I'm going to see if you can log off and log back on, and let's see if that helps. Brandon, there you are. Okay. Can you unmute and say hello?
Can you hear me?
I can, but there's two of you as panelists, and one of them is spelled incorrectly.
I'm Brandon Levine, Levine.
So there's another one on here. What's weird is that you're coming up as Levinre.
Change that.
There we go.
I have an echo on my end.
I think that's on my side. My partner in crime here has put her headphone down, so she'll be back in a second. It sounds better now. So good. We can see you and hear you, so we're all good now. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, Brandon, it looks like we have quorum, so we can get this meeting started.
All right. Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. The October 8th meeting of the CCTT Subcommittee is called to order. Moderator, can you please call roll?
Certainly. Carmela Beck, Avery Cohen, Kristen Heidelbach,
Present.
and Brandon, of course, and Scott Basterling. Scott, can you check in? You're unmuted on our end. There you are.
Okay, great.
All right. Quorum is established.
All right, moving on to item number 2, general public comment for those items not on the agenda. I'm not sure why it's getting it. You guys get an echo?
We can. Are you on your phone and your computer by chance?
No. Commenters, I would like to remind you that any comments for the items that are coming up later on, not on the agenda, should be held at that time. Moderator, please open public comment for the items not on the agenda.
Okay. All right. We are now taking public comment on agenda item number 2 for items not on the agenda. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise your hand by clicking the hand icon next to your name if you've logged into the meeting, or by pressing *3 if you've called into the meeting. All commenters will have 2 minutes to speak with a 30-second warning, and will have one opportunity to speak on each agenda item. And please keep it limited to this agenda item. So with that, we will go to our first commenter, which is Ross Gordon. I've sent you a request to unmute. There you go.
Everyone, Ross Gordon with Origins Council. We represent about 800 cannabis businesses, primarily small businesses and primarily small cultivators located in legacy producing regions throughout California. Submitted some comment on this, really just focusing on the disappointment that metric batch tagging was not addressed, at least in this agenda or in these regulations which are being put forward. And I think members of the committee may be aware of SB 622, which was legislation that passed last year, which explicitly enabled DCC to revisit the issue of tagging every plant in metric. So I'll respect your time. My guess is everyone here on the committee is familiar with the plant tagging issue, probably from your own experience. And you've heard a million times the reasons why everyone's very frustrated with it. So I'll just leave it at, would love to see this issue addressed by the committee in the future, and would love to see the issue addressed directly by the DCC also, especially with the opportunity provided if we are going to have regulatory promulgation on track and trace. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and Ryan, I've sent you a request to unmute.
Thank you very much. I'd like to respectfully request you amend California Government Code 53069.4 sections E and F. So cities that are inundated by illegal grow houses, most of which are owned and organized by gangs, such as the Chinese gangs we have seen in the news all too often. The hands of the cities are tied by 53069.4 section E, which allows these organized gangs to remove their equipment from a discovered house only to set up quickly elsewhere. All they have to have is a rental agreement with a tenant, quote unquote, that states that they were unaware that there was cannabis activity on the property, which then causes the city not to be allowed to apply fines, to take corrective actions and penalties against that location. The only action we are allowed per section F is to refer unlicensed grow houses to the Attorney General to undertake civil action. These gangs move too fast, and the Attorney General's office must already have a long list of things to correct in the state of California. I again respectfully ask that you strongly consider amending this section so cities can take action to help make their communities better. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, at this, anyone else for public comment for items not on the agenda? Raise your hand. You have one opportunity to speak on each agenda item. It looks like we have no more commenters. So would you like to close comment?
Comments? Not really sure why this happens. Are you guys getting that echo?
Stand by just a moment.
Seeing as no more requests for comment, moderator, can you please close the comment section?
Actually, just a moment. There is someone, and I'm not sure if there's two Ryans in the audience. So give me a moment. Let me unmute and see if it's the same person. Just a moment. Ryan, I've sent you a request to unmute.
Yeah, it's a different Ryan.
I'm sorry.
No worries. I just wanted to bring up the subject of pesticide tracking via metric, if there's time for that to talk about today. And that's all I wanted to add.
Great. Okay. Thank you. All right. Now there are no more commenters, so we can close public comment on agenda item number 2.
Okay, moving on to item number 3. The draft proposed regulatory updates to the track and trace regulations. I'd like to welcome DCC Deputy Director of Policy and Research, Jacqueline Campion, to give an overview of the proposed changes.
Levine. Welcome, members. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Jacqueline Campion, Deputy Director of Policy and Research. For today's meeting, DCC is excited to share with you our draft proposed updates to regulations on the California Cannabis Track and Trace System, also known as CCTT. A copy of this draft proposal can be found on the department's website, and I will provide you with a brief overview and look forward to the discussion and your feedback. So, in general, these proposed regulatory changes are going to add additional safeguards and enhancements to the track and trace CCTT system to prevent the diversion of cannabis to the illicit market. These proposed changes will also help ensure that cannabis sold in the licensed market meets product safety standards established to protect public health and safety. System updates will also support accurate data entry, evaluation, and tracking of accurate and meaningful data. So there are a few key areas of updates. One, prohibiting future dating. Under the current requirements, licensees are required to record activities in CCTT within 24 hours. The proposed changes will configure CCTT to prevent licensees from recording activities before they have actually occurred. Next, requiring licensees to use the same unit of measurement when accepting transfers. These changes will require a recipient licensee to use the same unit of measurement that was used by the initiating licensee when accepting a cannabis transfer. Next, requiring recipient licensee and transporter transfer request approvals. Under the current system, when a licensee initiates a transfer with another licensee, the intended recipient does not have an opportunity to review the incoming transfer before it is created electronically in CCTT. This change will require the initiating licensee to obtain approval from the recipient and transporter licensees before a shipping manifest can be created for the transfer. Licensees with an established business relationship can opt to enter into an auto-approval agreement and bypass the manual approval of individual transfers. Next, requiring retailers to record discount and tax fields when entering sales. Currently, the way sales data are entered in CCTT allow for variation and inconsistencies, which makes it difficult to determine the actual selling price in review of the data. This change will improve record keeping and the quality of market data by requiring consistent use of existing fields that are currently optional. Next, prevention of lab shopping. These proposed changes will enable CCTT system improvements to limit the number of test sample packages that can be created for a given batch. Distributors will be required to use a new test sample shipping manifest when initiating a transfer of a test sample to a testing laboratory. Next, requiring retailers to provide COAs to consumers or to customers. While retailers currently have access to testing certificates of analysis or COAs in CCTT for items in their inventory, they are not required to provide the COAs to customers when they're making a purchasing decision. These proposed changes will address this issue by requiring a retailer to provide a customer with a copy of the COA upon request for cannabis goods being offered for sale so that the customer is better equipped to make an informed choice about the cannabis they purchase and consume. And that concludes my summary. So Chair Levine, I will hand it back over to you.
You know, it looks like he might have dropped off for a moment. Let me see if he's in. Okay, just a moment. I think he was working on his,
Oh, it looks like you dropped.
all right, sorry about that. All right, Brandon, it looks like you're back on. Can we try your mic again? Let's see. All right, Brandon, are you there? There you are. But we can't hear you. Are you on two devices by chance?
No, I'm on one. For some reason, it keeps logging me on as two, though. I don't know how this is.
And your last name's spelled wrong on the second one, so the imposter can't spell. So there's not an echo right now, though.
Okay, but you can hear me.
Correct.
All
Yes.
right. Thank you, Deputy Director Campion. I would like to now open the floor to members for discussion on this item. If any motions are made, please ensure that the member states their name and their motion clearly for the record and that the motion is seconded. All motions must open for public comment before moving on to voting. All right, the motion is currently up for public comment. Moderator, can you please open the floor to public comment?
I'm going to jump in and is there any discussion from, actually go ahead, Jacqueline.
Thanks, moderator. Wanted to make sure that if any of the members wanted a chance to offer any thoughts, any feedback, any discussion on this item before we open up for public comment or motions, that members have a chance to discuss.
I just wanted to confirm that I know somebody brought up the pesticide tracking within metric. Did we vote on that in the last meeting? I cannot remember.
Member Cohen, thank you. We did on the last meeting.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to make a motion actually to implement SB 622 into this set of regulations so that we can push it forward to the general membership of the CAC so we can open that up for discussion.
Hi, this is counsel for the committee, Sarah Gardner. If I could clarify, that is actually not on the agenda, so that would be outside the scope of what you could discuss today and make recommendations on.
Okay, understood. I thought it was added to the agenda at the beginning of the meeting.
No, I think that was a request for it to be added by a member of the public, but that would have to be agendized for a future meeting.
Excellent. Okay, we'll work on that. Thank you.
Chair, it looks like there is no more discussion from members of the committee. Would you like to open up this item for public comment?
All right, the motion is currently up for public comment. Moderator, can you please open the floor for public comment?
You bet. All right. We are now taking public comment on agenda item number 3, which is proposed regulatory updates to track and trace regulations. If you'd like to make a comment, please indicate that by raising your hand by clicking on the hand icon next to your name if you've logged into the meeting, or by pressing *3 if you've called into the meeting. All commenters will have 2 minutes to speak with a 30-second warning, and will have 1 opportunity to speak on each agenda item. And please keep comments limited to this agenda item. And with that, we'll go to our first commenter, which is Holly. Holly, I've just sent you a request to unmute.
Taking comments on these agenda items. Thank you for bringing, thank you to the DCC staff for bringing changes to the regulations. I first want to just comment on the requirement that a licensee must accept in the same unit or measurement as the initiating licensee. There are operational problems with that. It is very handy as an incoming, when transfers are incoming, to be able to receive those in the weight that your own operations generally maintains their records in. When you run reports in metric, if depending on how that report is run, it will just output a number without showing what the unit of weight is. So when you're trying to consolidate and run inventory reports and ensure that everything is done correctly, you can create quite a lot of confusion within an operation. The other thing is that by having to receive that, you have to then retag, which frankly feels like something that's just invented by Metric to sell more tags and cost the state and thus operators more money on a recurring basis. So that one caused me some concern just in terms of operations. And I understand the rationale of, like, sometimes there's mistakes, but I think education rather than requirements would be a better system there. And I know that you're not taking comments necessarily on the inclusion of state law changes.
30 seconds.
It would be nice to see those reflected here. Those will decrease the cost for operators through decreasing, again, the cost of implementing the metric system and paying a third-party system rather than maintaining income within our own state. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, Kai, I've sent you a request to unmute. Whoops. There you go.
Thank you very much. This is Kai. I'm a software provider in this space. So we provide a retail software. And obviously, whenever regulations change, that means we get to do work that we didn't plan to do to make sure we can keep up with those regulations and keep our customers compliant. On the note of lab results and being able to have a COA that can be shown at retail, definitely am in support of that. But also want to make sure that the way that that is implemented, that there's some way that either the labs can provide a public URL, like a public address that is then stored in metric that we can then utilize in the point of sale, or some other method that makes that easy to get. Those lab results aren't easy to get those COAs currently. And I also don't want to store another copy of it if I don't have to. So if the labs can have a public encoded URL that can be stored in metric when those lab results are stored, we can put that within our system on the product profile and the batches. And then whenever a customer checks out or is just wanting to inquire on a product, they can easily, the bud tender can click the link, show them a COA, print it, whatever, right? There's a lot we can do with it. So just having a really easy way to get that lab result, from the lab, ideally, in some sort of a public way would be huge. I know retail ID is also one of Metric's potential tries to solve this, right? By having that QR code actually on the product that could be scanned and go to a URL that's managed by the brand that could have the COA there as well. So a couple of potential
30 seconds.
just to see if we can make sure that technically that's done easily. Otherwise, it can be a real nightmare to try and get those lab results properly through Metric. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Keanu Vargas, I've sent you a request to unmute.
I heard that there was going to be tests, like the number of test samples you can submit. There's limits to that. I'm just curious, what are the limits? The pre-approval for transfers, if the spirit of like doing a pre-approval is just to prevent rogue transfers, I would just suggest like changing the conditions in which you can just reject a manifest. I'm not so sure that having a pre-approval feature would help a lot of the people in the industry, since there's a lot of folks operating in rural areas, and like if your metric operator is a consultant, it might be difficult to get a hold of them. So I'm wary of adding another layer of examination for transfers. Yeah, I think it'd be just easier to just change the conditions of which you can reject transfers. So, thank you.
This is Sebastian Gomez Devine calling from Central Coast Agriculture. Wanted to just throw in our 2 cents here regarding to the new proposed regulations, specifically section 15049.1 for metric reporting of pesticide applications. We feel that this proposal would require an unreasonable amount of additional labor to meet the reporting requirements, and would like to suggest as an alternative that pesticide management plans continue to be kept on file with the DCC. However, with an alternative process for submitting updates to these pest management plans once they are approved by the licensee's local ag commissioner. This should not require review and approval through a science amendment process prior to implementation. And through this, we feel that the DCC would be able to maintain record of pesticides being used on site, and remove additional labor requirements that metric reporting would require, as well as eliminate lengthy delays for processing amendments that changes to our plan have required in the past. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Frank A., I've sent you a request to unmute.
My name is Frank Arias. I am also a software vendor working with a number of distribution licensees amongst operators from the entire supply chain. A previous commenter spoke to the idea of transfer approval or pre-approval, and while I totally understand the spirit of the proposed rule, what I don't believe is taken into consideration is what the undue burden that it would place on operators that have to deal with upwards of hundreds of transfers that must be carried out daily, and within a very short period of orders being placed. Now, these are being done on behalf of manufacturers, or I'm sorry, on behalf of brands, or other operators, up the supply chain. So if you consider that, trying to stop the presses to obtain auto approval agreements with all of the retailers that you're delivering product to, would take a significant period of time. And if there isn't a response within 48 hours, suddenly that auto approval request is canceled. This could potentially bring a significant portion of the supply chain to a screeching halt, which would
30
cause
seconds.
severe harm. So I urge some reconsideration of this proposed change. Thank you.
Thank you. And Michael Ramirez, I've sent you a request to unmute. There you go.
Thank you for letting me have a moment to speak. I do agree on the pre-approval side, as Mr. Vargas spoke earlier. I do see the hindrance that this is going to cause, especially we have a distribution company, retail and manufacturing in a grow. But the inner workings, I have a feeling that this is going to bog down our system and cause some unduly work on our people. On the COAs to customers, the only question I have, we do have a couple of retails, is that I feel that this does not align with the governor's thoughts on the carbon footprint, on reducing that. This is doing just the opposite. Not saying that every customer is going to want a copy, but this will cause an issue with that side, with the QR codes that we provide now, and the fact that even our homeless have cell phones, that the QR code is more than adequate, and I would like to see that part revisited. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we are continuing to take comment on agenda item number 3, proposed regulatory updates to track and trace regulations. Is there any more public comment? Raise your hand. Emily Porter, I've sent you a request to unmute.
Consultant up in Nevada County. I just wanted to bring some concern regarding the sharing of the COA. I think that product transparency is a great idea. However, as discussed in a Metric in-person workshop in Santa Rosa recently, there's a lot of concern around the personal information and specifically the address that is usually included on COAs. And for security reasons, I would just really want to see some kind of restricted information when it comes to presenting these COAs to the public. It's incredibly inappropriate if we're going to have farms and people who live there, their home address is available. There's already immensity of problems with thefts and break-ins. So I just wanted to put my 2 cents in regarding that, and I hope it gets taken into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Last call for public comment on agenda item number 3. Oh, Yasha Khan, I've just sent you a request to unmute.
I would like to request for all cannabis testing data that gets entered into Metric to be made publicly available, as has been done in a few other states, as this allows the industry to audit the industry, consumers to audit the industry, and for us to make sure that testing is being done honestly.
Thank you. Samantha de Trinidad, just sent you a request to unmute.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you. My name is Samantha de Trinidad. I work currently for cannabis cultivator, processor, and distributor. Deputy Director Campion made a good point earlier with regards to tracking accurate and meaningful data. I think the key word there is meaningful. I'm hopeful that in future legislation sessions or rulemaking periods, that the DCC contemplates ways to both enhance the tracking of meaningful data while considering ways to support the actual business of cannabis. A lot of the proposals and a lot of the comments echoed by other guests have highlighted the operating challenges and, importantly, the operating costs that a lot of these measures would put on businesses. You don't need another person explaining to you how dire the cannabis industry is in California, but here I am. So I appreciate the attempts and the spirit at which the proposed regulations are trying to accomplish, but I just don't see how they're going to accomplish those as written. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Anyone else have comment on this topic? All right, Chair Levine, it looks like we have no more public comment on item number 3. Would you like to close comment?
Now that we've, from the public, are there any discussions from the members on this item? If no, we'll move to a vote on this motion.
Hi, Chair. This is Kristen Heidelbach. I just wanted to take a few moments to express my appreciation to the DCC for trying to find a way to regulate an industry that thus far has been somewhat difficult. I think that the important thing that we need to walk away from here is that this is enhanced compliance that we're looking at. And while I understand the concerns that were brought up by the public, and I'm stuck, and there's a needle to be thread here. We can't complain about lack of enforcement. We can't complain about the industry not working, and then also be reluctant to provide tools that would give the DCC a better chance of providing oversight. So I'll leave it there. I am supportive of these proposed regulations for track and trace. I just wanted that on the record. Thank you.
Anybody else? Well,
Yeah, I'd just like to say, oh, sorry. Depending on how the vote goes, I'm interested in talking a bit more about the rejections of manifests versus the pre-approval process, if any other members had thoughts on that.
Well, I can say the pre-approval process would probably work to the advantage of the operator, given you can speed up the process. But adding more layers, like I come from the industry, deep in every facet of the cannabis space, adding more layers definitely causes major disruption when you can see the industry already is challenged with so many different things keeping us from operating, at a profit. So the more compliance that may or may not be necessary, unnecessary, definitely causes people to make, different choices. And it really does come down to cost and the ability to operate and pull off some of these things. And then what is really the reward for adding on other layers of compliance? So it's tough to pinpoint every single one of them, but like changing the unit of measurement while accepting transfers, and every operator has a different way of intaking and processing their orders. And so it's a matter of relearning, how you're going to track these different units of measurement, and then being able to implement it with the software that you have and your whole operations methods and data analysis. So I do see some challenges with some of these pieces that, are going to actually create more work. But I guess having a better understanding of what the DCC really needs these changes for, every one of them. And I could echo with the some of the commenters on having to have the pre-approval or the metric transfer, having it be approved before you can send it, definitely disrupts the operations and process flow that we're currently working under. So, you give to get, I guess you're going to create a little bit more work and relieve some of it once you can identify that those are trusted partners. So all in all, I'm pretty much in support with it. But I'd like to hear from you guys.
Chair Levine, I have 2 more commenters, and since we're on the topic, would you mind if we take 2 more comments from the public?
Sure. Yes, let's take this.
Thank you so much, moderator. This is Deputy Director Jacqueline Campion again. Just wanted to remind members and also members of the public who are tuning in, we do have, as in addition to the draft proposed reg text on our website, we also have a rationale document that provides a little bit of the reasoning for why the changes are proposed. Additionally, since we do have a number of hands raised that we're seeing from the public, and it sounds like there is more discussion, Chair Levine, if you would like to reopen the floor for additional public comment after the members discuss, please feel free to do so. Thank you.
Okay. Do we have any other comments from the members on the team? I guess seeing as that we have no comments from the team, I'd like to reopen up public comment. Moderator, can you please open the floor for public comment?
Absolutely. Marco, I've sent you a request to unmute. Go ahead.
Thank you so much for giving me the chance to speak. Marco Traiani of Digamma, big into lab testing and chemical analysis validation of cannabis. One of the things I wanted to bring up with this track and trace is an issue that I've been seeing with the committee that I'm on in Colorado. And this is, I think, going to come right after Governor Newsom's hemp ban. When Delta 8 and those other products are banned, what many of the operators do is instead of saying, oh, we've got to shut down, is they say, hey, we got a chemical process that can convert Delta 8 back into Delta 9. They make synthetic Delta 9 extract. Delta 9 is the natural THC in, healthy, naturally grown cannabis. And they switch this stuff back into Delta 9, and then they smuggle it into the dispensaries by faking track and trace data. I believe Colorado uses metric data to do this. When we spoke to the MED in Colorado, they said, metric can't really catch this. You need chemical testing. And I don't know if you guys know, there's only one lab, basically Infinity Cal, which is down in San Diego in California. It's also over in Michigan. They can do the chemical test to detect this synthetic Delta 9 that basically picks up on cis Delta 9 THC, which the plant doesn't make, but these artificial chemical conversions do. Now, with the difficulty of chemical testing to prove this kind of fraud, I think that anything we can look at to see about closing these loopholes, because when we brought it up to Colorado, they said, metric is not designed to catch people sort of smuggling batches in. I mean, I think it's been a long time thing in the California cannabis industry that there are metric consultants that can make batches disappear, which were then sold on the black market. Now, this is from 2017, 2018. Those loopholes may have been closed, but the reverse is a concern. That stuff from hemp that was chemically converted may be unsafe with heavy metals or weird cannabinoids we don't know much about, the medical implications of maybe coming in and being bought at the dispensaries. And I just wanted to make the committee aware that this may be able to be sort of nipped in the bud at the track and trace level if the right things are in place.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Carl Howard, I've sent you a request to unmute.
wanted to discuss the retailers providing COAs to the customers. That can create a lot of backlog within a dispensary store, especially if a customer wants to look at multiple ones. If there was a centralized website database that would be open to the public to search their product, I think would be a far simpler and easier process to handle. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Holly, I've just sent you a request to unmute.
Sorry about that. I pushed the button 2 times. Thank you very much for that.
So did I. So did I.
Yeah. Whoops. Thank you for opening it up for public comment again. There is a lot in here, and as we know, like the minutes go quickly. So I wanted to just address a concern that's arising, although not necessarily written into this draft, that while preventing lab shopping by distributors, there could potentially be a prevention of cultivators or manufacturers prevented from shopping their distributors, right? It is in the benefit of people to be able to have flexibility with who they work with in terms of supply chain. And so it's just something that I wanted to make sure is on the minds of the committee and the department as these go forward. So thank you.
Thank you. Isaac Anderson, I've sent you a request to unmute.
The opportunity for allowing me to give my 2 cents here. Just wanted to tack on to the transfer approval process. So I work for a large retailer, and we work with large distributors, and our inventory staff at our dispensaries often get in, let's say, around 9 a.m. But our distributors are creating their transfers around, let's say, 6, 7 a.m. And that's when they leave their facility and route to our dispensary. So there's a good couple hours where our team is not in office to approve those transfers. Now I understand that we have the auto approval function that could work in that situation, but on the other hand, we have a number of rejections. Distributors will substitute products that we never approved, and we just inevitably have to reject it. So Monday that the transfer might be auto approved, but let's say by Thursday, that same distributor, because we had a rejection on Monday, that auto approval is broken, and now we just have another bottleneck in the supply chain. So I just wanted to tack on there, and I do foresee plenty of bottlenecking here with that transfer approval process. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Jake Brooks, I've just sent you a request to unmute.
Okay. Hello.
You're on.
Okay, thank you. I came in a little bit late, and my topic of discussion may be a little bit out of context for what's been displayed here, but we're a cultivator. We have a sizable cultivation, about 15 acres of canopy in greenhouses, and persistent issue for us that I know has been raised at the state level, and I'm sure the committee is well aware of, is metric tagging and the amount of tags and plastic that we produce as a cultivator is probably my main concern as a farmer. You really judge as a farmer by how efficient you are and how little waste you produce. Yeah, every year we produce multiple tons of plastic from cultivation. Not just the plastic in cultivation, but staples or plastic tags that we affix the plants. We fix the tags to the plants on. Any energy and sort of vigor that the committee can put towards package tagging of up to 500 or 1,000 plants per table would be greatly appreciated, because every single 2 weeks when I get 7 boxes from Florida filled with 25 kilos of bundled plastic tags that come from China, it sort of just makes me cringe every single time. We grow flowers, we grow cilantro and peppers, and I'm unfamiliar with any crop that has to go through this process. This is a process created for, tagging trees and tagging citrus from Franwell. And now the company's converted to this, and we are basically just wasting millions of dollars every year. We're talking about these small issues,
30
of
seconds.
technical issues in metric, but the big glaring problem here is that we're producing something that has no economic value to the customer, to the regulators, or to the people that produce this crop. So, you know, I appreciate the time and appreciate the work that you guys are doing, and that's sort of my 2 cents on what would make it better for us as a farmer.
Thank you. Diana Gamzon, I've sent you a request to unmute. There you go, Diana.
Gamzon, Executive Director of the Nevada County Cannabis Alliance. Our organization represents over 180 licensed cultivators here in Nevada County. And we just want to express our disappointment that the regulations did not include any of the proposed changes to implement SB 622, which would have enabled batch tagging of mature cannabis plants in metric. As the previous speaker spoke to, there's a massive amount of plastic waste that goes into this process. And in addition, we generally represent small farmers, and the amount of resources that goes into individually plant tagging is monumental, and it's been a really big barrier to a lot of our farmers in ensuring full compliance, just due to just the gross amount of time spent in addition to the waste. And so we do ask that your board prioritize this as an agenda item for a future item, and that this is something that is seriously considered as the proposed changes continue on their path. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Keanu Vargas, just sent you a request to unmute.
Hey, thanks. Yeah, just going off the 2 previous speakers. I mean, in addition to like physical waste, I mean, it's also just a time suck in the track and trace system. Like, there's no, I know you can harvest through CSV formatting, but there's no real training other than the supplemental guide to know how to do that. And in the system, you can only harvest like 142 plants at a time. So yeah, you'd also, if you get rid of that requirement, you're also just saving like having to store a bunch of dead data, because all those tags that you use go into the inactive section. So that adds up over time. I mean, you're storing that data, that historical data somewhere. So, I mean, there's also the digital footprint to consider too. So, yeah, just want to add that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. And Rob Springer, I've sent you a request to unmute.
And going along with, you know, the pre-approval process, that I agree that it can be a huge bottleneck for us getting deliveries. So one of the things that I'm worried about is that if we're going to have a pre-approval process, some of the data that we see with the licenses, like the phone numbers, the emails that are with those, they're so outdated. So if we're going to have that pre-approval process, we need that updated in the system so that we can call these people and we can verify if we get especially being a retailer, somebody who hasn't delivered before, we're not going to be able to contact them. So I think one of the big things that we're going to need to do is update what those emails are, who the contact numbers are, because a lot of the numbers go to the owners and we cannot get a hold of those people, and it's just going to be dead time. A delivery driver sitting there waiting to go to the next delivery. It's just going to be a huge bottleneck if we don't have the correct information to contact those people with pre-approvals. Like another gentleman said, a lot of those workers aren't coming in until 9 or 10 o'clock, and by then we're running. We have deliveries there waiting, yada, yada, yada. So, I mean, just being on a retailer standpoint, that just can slow so much down when you're trying to have a delivery come in and customers come in at the same time. So I would just state that we need to have updated information overhaul in the DCC and metric if that's going to be the standard. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Is there any more public comment? Anyone else have another comment? If you do, raise your hand. Frank A., I've just sent you a request to unmute.
Thank you. I spoke a little while ago, so I'll be very, very brief. I just want to kind of piggyback on you know, all of the speakers who have shared their thoughts on the transfer request approvals. Again, you know, understanding the rationale for it, I just do urge, the decision makers to consider the ramifications up and down the entire supply chain, the cost in time, the cost in effort, the fact that it's highly unlikely that Metric is going to be able to account for, what is a crucial change via the API for those that are using, third-party systems that could potentially help to, streamline, some of this and add efficiencies to some of this work. There's going to be a lot of manual work and a lot of time spent, a lot of energy, which results in money in what is a very low margin business, for everyone, to address, what is a valid problem and a valid issue, but, really should consider, the potential, costs and harms that could come from, making such a change, and then what the repercussions would be for the industry in California as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. This is one more. Drew Plabani, I've sent you a request to unmute.
My name is Drew Plabani. I am the Cannabis Division Director for the County of Trinity. I was a bit surprised in these proposed or updates to these proposed regs that it does not address batch tagging, as that seems quite clear that creates less waste and significant efficiencies for all cultivators. Additionally, something that I don't see, and I may have missed it, but has always surprised me in terms of the way that California decided to utilize track and trace, is that they're on final packaged product retailed. There is no reference to the batch, the harvest batch UID, or the farm that the product was grown. And as I understand it, when a bulk package arrives at a distributor, they have the opportunity to affix a new batch package tag. And just curious why that has never been implemented, and hope that you all are able to address that at some point in the future. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, last call for agenda item number 3. All right, Chair Levine, it looks like there is no more public comment. Would you like to close this item?
All right, seeing that there's no more public comment, we'll close comments on this motion. And should we maybe open back up for discussion with the members again? No? All right, well, I don't know, do we have to raise a motion to move anything forward, or?
I would entertain a motion to move the regulations forward.
So do we have any other support on it?
Is there a second to that motion?
I personally think that the pre-approval thing could be looked at again. I don't know, like, the impact is pretty much unforeseen right now. Nobody really is able to calculate what is actually going to happen when you disrupt the product supply chain in this way. And I do see it being a major hurdle, not just for operators, just the whole industry, how product is flowing through right now. So is there a way that we come back to that part of it, or I'm not really sure how the process works on this?
I was just piggybacking off of that. I was gonna say, like, I'm not sure if this is appropriate, but I would motion to go forward with all of the proposed regulations except for those modified in section 154 15049.2, talking about pre-approval, requiring transporter licensee transfer request approvals.
Member Cohen, even with the auto approval feature that would allow folks, because some of the concerns that I heard from folks was that they might have issues contacting licensees if there's a problem. But in the way I'm understanding and reading these current proposed regs is that there has to be an initial approval and at least contact between the two licensees, and then they can set up the auto approval feature, which seems to save time. Obviously, if people already have an established relationship and they trust that other vendor, I don't know why it would cause any kind of bottleneck in the supply chain.
I would just say from experience that there are changes that need to be made to this process, but I don't believe that these proposed changes of pre-approval on the front end, I don't believe that that's the correct way to do it. I think that there is a larger discussion that needs to happen, but I don't believe that the pre-approval is going to make that process easier for anyone.
I would think if you gave it a little bit more time than 48 hours, because a lot of people in the industry, they're not great at communicating. I'd probably be one of those people. And it can take a couple of days sometimes to respond to a product inquiry or purchase order. And some companies move faster than others. So if there was, I could see it working if it wasn't on a really strict timeline where we would be stuck like, okay, you have to get all this done, because everybody in the industry are wearing many, many hats. And just to get product into their dispensary, because some people, they're small dispensaries, they're wearing 20 different hats to get around to like signing off on that transfer. It may take them a day or two or more. So I could see it working. I understand the intention of having the approval for the first communication with the new relationship, and then having the ongoing pre-approved. But maybe there's a way that we can add a little bit of time to that process.
How much time are you thinking, Chair Levine?
I would imagine they could get it done in, 1 working week, and that would be way more than enough, I would say. I just, like I say, I know how the industry works, and it would be challenging to put a very strict, 2-day timeline on it. Because what happens when somebody, initiates it on a Friday, and you may or may not get to processing that order until Tuesday or something like that. It doesn't give you a lot of time to approve that order. And what if it's a 3-day weekend or something like that? So I think there's probably a little bit more clarification also in that timeline, as that 48 hours of working days, things like that. So I think it would get caught up in a little bit of like, not moving it forward because of a technicality, or forcing all of your work to move on the beginning of the week and not be able to, put these orders together on the Friday, or like some companies aren't open on the weekend. A lot of distribution companies only deliver from like Monday through Thursday. So I think adding on that bit of time will accommodate some of that other people's schedules, really. And I don't know if we're allowed, if we make the recommendation of, okay, it's 1 working week, how that process, gets written up, or if it's even something to consider.
I am curious, Chair, with your experience at retail, do you have orders just show up from brands that are unannounced? I mean, I've heard horror stories, but I'm just being from what I've heard, where brands are trying to get on the shelf and they'll know that, let's say the buyer's out of town, and then they send an order over and then it's accepted just with the knowledge of thinking, oh no, they must have ordered it. And then all of a sudden, to try to send it back in the supply chain is challenged, because technically I think you have to retest it if it gets sent back from retailer to distro, and it can create a lot of challenges. And um, I I feel like there like some sort of approval process would just kind of like fine tune the system of, okay, I place this order and then you make it in metric, and then I accept that this is going to be the order, and then it moves forward. It seems like a pretty simple system, but you would have more experience on the retail side than I would.
I'm not saying that we don't have the pre-approval process. I'm just saying that the order doesn't get canceled if you don't, complete it in 48 hours. I think that this is a fairly good plan, but to make, like, force it to happen in 48 hours, like I say, you could have a brand over here that, like, hey, we're diligent and we put our order together, and then they send the pre-approval to us. And I mean, not saying that we take this much time, but I do know retailers that do. It may take 3 days for them to sign that, and then it would, be shipped over. Just making it so that the order doesn't get canceled if they don't complete it in 48 hours.
And just to piggyback off Chair Levine on that too, coming from a cultivation background, specifically nursery, it's really helpful for the people who are making those transfers to be able to get a little bit of a head start, because they could be transferring, hundreds of different batches per day. So I see where the pre-approval can be helpful, but yeah, being able to not just 48 hours for the other people to accept it, but giving the sender a little bit more leeway so that they can get their ducks in a row. Maybe like, and not only have, 48 hours to do that on the front end, if that makes sense.
So is the suggestion, I guess, to amend it so 5 working days?
I think that's reasonable. Nothing else changes really. It's still the pre-approval process. You still have the ability to work with your trusted vendors as well. And it just keeps the process from just being stopped from, the people who are already challenged with time in the industry. That you still won't send the order until you have an approval. It's just not closing the order out so that the supplier is not continually having to send those free requests to the retailer who may have 10,000 items a day coming into their intake room. So I would suggest 5 working days would be more than reasonable, and it doesn't change anything else.
Yeah, that seems reasonable to me.
It seems reasonable.
So I don't know if the chair can do a motion, file motion, but I would like to make a motion to approve this with those changes of going from 48 hours to 5 working days. In, what is it, section 15049.
Second that.
Like, moderator, can we please call roll for this vote?
Let me restate the motion, if I may.
Okay.
You are motion to change in 15049 to change from 48 hours to 5 working days.
Yes.
That's correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So let's take a vote on that. Member Cohen?
Yay.
Member Heidelbach?
Yes.
Chair Levine?
Yes.
And Scott Basterling?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes.
All right. I don't know what else I'm supposed to say here. Members, thank you for your time today. I look forward to working with you all in the future. Meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you everyone who spoke today. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you,
Appreciate you
everybody.
all. Thank you.